Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at 3M, the company that's been around for over a century and makes a whole bunch of products that I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with.
Like Post-it notes
Yeah, those.
and Scotch tape.
Exactly. But we're going to go a little bit deeper
Yeah,
than those
much deeper.
and try to understand their business model.
How this company makes money.
Yes, exactly, how they make money. And the cool thing is we have their 10K reports from 2023 and 2024, along with the first and second quarter 10Q reports.
Oh, wow. So we've got a lot to go off of here. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah. And these financial documents, people may not think they're that exciting, but it's like having a backstage pass
Yes.
to see how a company works.
It's all the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, stuff we don't normally get to see.
I love it.
And some of the stuff that I saw in these documents, and maybe we'll get into it later, was pretty fascinating. PFAS liabilities.
Oh.
There's a spinoff. Even stuff about employee stock options.
Oh, yeah. Okay, interesting.
But before we jump into all of that,
yeah.
it's important to kind of just get an overview, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Let's set the stage here. What are we looking at? What kind of company is 3M? I mean, it's not just Post-it notes and Scotch tape, right?
Right. So they have, they mentioned in the reports, 4 main business segments.
Okay.
Which are safety and industrial, transportation and electronics, healthcare, and then in consumer.
Okay, so those are pretty broad categories.
They're really broad. And, I mean, we're talking
Huge range of products.
huge range. I mean, Post-it notes, respirators, dental adhesives.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, they've got their hands in everything.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not like these are small, they're not small niches.
Not at all.
And so, when we look at the 2023 10K report,
Yeah.
it actually breaks down how these different segments are contributing to their revenue stream.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. And their largest segment
Okay.
is the safety and industrial.
Okay.
So that one brings in the most revenue.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And then followed by that is the transportation and electronics.
Okay.
And then after that, healthcare. And lastly, consumer.
Consumer. Oh, wow. So the consumer products that we all know are actually their smallest segment.
Yeah. And, that was interesting to me because I feel like that's what, most people.
Wait, that's what we're most familiar with. Yeah.
But it does make sense when you think about it that having such a broad portfolio
Yeah.
really does help them, kind of weather any economic storms.
Yeah. I mean, if one area is struggling, maybe they can lean on the strength of another area to offset it.
Exactly. And speaking of weathering storms, I was looking at the respirators.
Yeah.
Right. And that just made me think about COVID. I don't know. I don't have the answer to this, but was that a huge surge for them or was it more of a mixed bag?
Yeah, I'm sure it was probably both, right? I mean, I do remember at the very beginning, everybody was scrambling to try to get those N95 masks.
Yeah.
And that is a 3M product, so I imagine they must have seen a huge increase in demand.
I would think so.
But then also, on the other hand, there's the potential downside of when demand falls.
Right.
What happens when everybody has their masks and they don't need them anymore?
Right. And we see this mentioned in these 10Qs and 10Ks. They talk about how certain product lines can be really volatile.
Yeah.
Just depending on what's going on in the world.
Exactly.
And they really are, subject to the global market.
Yeah. And that's a key takeaway, I think, for anyone looking at a company like 3M. They're not immune to these global forces, even though they are so diversified.
Yeah, it's like riding a roller coaster.
Right.
But at least it's a roller coaster with multiple tracks.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so we've got all these different products and revenue streams. But how much does it actually cost to run this global operation, right?
Yeah, the cost side of things.
I was looking at how much they spend on R&D, and I was really surprised.
Research and development, yeah.
Yeah, because it actually increased
Oh, wow.
as a percentage of sales in 2023.
So they're putting more money into research and development, even though, things might be a little uncertain globally.
Yeah. And so what's the strategy there? Why is that such a priority?
Well, if we look back historically at 3M, they're known for innovation, right? I mean, they have thousands of patents.
Yeah.
They're constantly developing new products and technologies, and I think that's what allows them to stay ahead of the competition.
Right.
And maintain that kind of market leadership that they have.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a cost driver, for sure, all that research and development, but it's an investment. It's an investment in the future.
Yeah, like constantly planting seeds for future growth.
Exactly. I mean, just to give you an example, 3M was a pioneer in nonwoven materials. And they've leveraged that expertise to create everything from, high performance respirators to advanced moon dressings. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Um, so R&D is definitely a significant cost, but what about some of the other costs involved in running a company like this?
Yeah, sure.
I noticed restructuring charges,
Ah, yeah.
and I have to admit, I'm not really.
Those can be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I don't really get what that means.
So basically, restructuring charges are kind of like imagine you're rearranging the furniture in your house, right?
Okay.
You're trying to make better use of the space.
Right.
And so 3M does this sometimes. They're trying to streamline their operations. It could involve consolidating facilities, it could involve selling off parts of the business, or unfortunately, it could also involve layoffs.
Oh, okay.
So it's a strategic realignment to stay competitive.
But it comes with a price tag.
Yes, it does. It comes with a price tag.
Okay. And then while we're on the topic of cost, I'm also curious about, employee compensation and benefits.
Yeah.
Because, I was reading about I think they call it a trust-based approach.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They
Yeah.
really emphasize creating a positive work environment.
And so how does that play out?
So yeah, I mean it's not just about offering competitive salaries and stock options and benefits like pension plans, which they do, but it's more about this philosophy of empowering their employees, giving them more autonomy.
Okay.
And they believe that leads to higher engagement, higher productivity.
It's like they're saying, hey, we trust you
Exactly. Yeah.
to do your best work,
Right.
which I think is pretty cool.
It is refreshing.
But I mean, managing a global workforce
Yeah.
can't be easy, right? I mean,
It's a whole different ballgame.
yeah, it seems like it would be super challenging.
It definitely is. I mean, they have to navigate different labor laws, cultural norms, economic conditions,
Yeah, it's a lot.
all around the world.
Yeah, it's like trying to herd cats from all over the world.
Yes.
So they've got this massive and diverse product portfolio. They're investing heavily in R&D. They're trying to foster a positive work environment. But how do they actually define their value to customers?
Right.
Like across all these different.
Such a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the key question, right? What's their value proposition? And I think it boils down to a few things: quality, reliability, and innovation.
Mhm.
They're often solving very specific problems with really unique solutions. For example, 3M is a leader in something called micro-replication technology,
Okay.
which basically involves creating incredibly precise structures on a microscopic level.
Mm.
And they've used this technology to, create things like brighter road signs, more efficient LCD screens. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. They're not
Lots
just.
of cutting edge stuff.
Yeah. They're not just making products. They're.
Keep pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. But with so many products, I mean, couldn't you see some people just being like, well, they're just a commodity provider?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a fair point. So how do they differentiate themselves? That's the question, right? And I think their competitive advantage lies in a few key areas. First, their massive product portfolio.
Okay.
Second, their global reach.
Right.
And third, that relentless focus on innovation that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
So few companies can match their breadth of offerings, and their global presence allows them to serve diverse markets, even in the face of, all the geopolitical challenges that we see today.
Right. Right. And I mean, speaking of those geopolitical challenges, that's what really stood out to me in the 10K reports was, all the international operations.
Yeah.
But what about the risks associated with that global footprint?
Right.
I mean, there's currency fluctuations.
Yeah.
There's trade tensions.
Hmm.
There's even stuff about, the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Yeah.
How do all those factors kind of play into their business model?
Well, it's a complex world out there.
Yeah.
And 3M, like any multinational company, faces all sorts of geopolitical challenges.
Right.
And these challenges can definitely impact their bottom line.
Right. I mean, currency fluctuations, like you said, can erode profits. Trade tensions can disrupt supply chains. And conflicts like the one in Ukraine can just create like massive uncertainty and volatility.
Absolutely. It's a constant balancing act. It's a lot for any company to juggle.
Yeah.
But speaking of navigating all those challenges, we were talking about those divestors and a spinoff
Oh,
earlier.
right.
I mean, those are some pretty big moves
Yeah.
that 3M's making to kind of stay competitive.
Yeah, selling off parts of the business and creating a whole new company,
Yeah.
that's not something you see every day.
No, it's not. And I think it really underscores, this key theme in 3M's operational strategy, which is, focusing on their core areas of strength
Right.
and streamlining their portfolio.
Okay, so it's like they're pruning the tree.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting rid of those dead branches to allow the healthy ones to flourish.
Yeah. And we actually see this strategy in action in the 10Q reports.
Oh, okay.
So in April 2024, they completed the spinoff of their healthcare business.
Wow.
And they created a new publicly traded company called Solventum.
Solventum. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a told move,
It
right?
is, yeah. And the 10Q actually goes into some of the details about how they issued bonds to finance the separation.
Right.
They had to set up a revolving credit facility,
Right.
which is kind of like a financial safety net,
Right.
the new company.
Mm.
And they had to hammer out all these agreements to define the relationship between 3M and this newly independent company.
It's like untangling a giant knot
It is. It's very complicated.
with all those financial threads.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's zoom out for a second. Besides these, divestitures and spinoffs, what are some of the other key operational activities that keep 3M running smoothly?
I mean,
I'm thinking about things like manufacturing,
right.
supply chain management, their global reach.
Right. So, yeah, those are all critical functions. I mean, obviously, manufacturing is at the core of their business.
Yeah.
They have this vast network of factories all over the world.
Yeah, I can only imagine the logistical challenges
Oh, I
of
know.
managing a global supply chain.
Especially with all the disruptions we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, yeah, with, the geopolitical instability, the trade tensions, the natural disasters.
Right. And I mean, the 10Ks actually highlight some of these specific risks.
Right.
They had to deal with supply chain disruptions related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict
Right.
and the pandemic.
Well, of course. Yeah, really threw a wrench into things.
So how do they deal with all of that?
Well, I think diversification
Yeah.
is a big part of it.
Okay.
Having operations in different parts of the world and offering such a diverse range of products really does provide a buffer against risk.
It's like having multiple safety nets.
Exactly. But it's
Yeah.
not just about spreading the risk.
Got-
It's also about optimizing their operations.
Okay.
So they're constantly innovating
Right.
and finding ways to improve efficiency in their manufacturing processes.
Okay.
Whether it's, reducing waste,
Yeah.
lowering energy consumption,
Okay.
streamlining production lines.
So they're constantly trying to fine-tune the engine, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay. But let's not forget about the people who make all this happen, right? The employees.
The human element, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about 3M's trust-based approach to work earlier, but how does that actually play out in practice? Right. So it's not just a slogan, it's really embedded in their company culture.
Okay.
They encourage employees to take ownership of their work, to experiment, to make mistakes,
Right.
as long as they learn from them.
Yeah.
And they provide a lot of support
Okay.
and resources to help their employees grow and develop their skills.
That sounds pretty empowering.
It is. It's a very positive work environment.
But I mean, how do you maintain that?
Right.
Like when you have so many employees
It's tough.
all over the world.
It's a constant effort.
Yeah.
They use all sorts of communication channels, global town halls, online forums, even social media
Wow.
to keep their employees informed and connected.
Okay.
And they really emphasize collaboration
Right.
and knowledge sharing across different teams and departments.
That's about creating a sense of community,
Yeah, exactly.
even within a global organization.
Even though they're all over the place, it's still one 3M.
Yeah. Okay. But let's talk about money for a second. We talked about, employee compensation earlier, but I remember seeing something in the reports about stock options.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to admit, the world of finance is not really my forte.
It can be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, so could you break it down for me?
Yeah, so basically, a stock option gives an employee the right, but not the obligation,
Okay.
to buy company stock at a set price
Okay.
within a certain time frame.
Okay.
So it's kind of like getting a coupon for company stock.
Okay.
A coupon that could become very valuable
Right.
if the stock price goes up.
So it's a potential bonus tied to the company's success?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a way to incentivize employees.
Okay. But how do they decide who gets these stock options?
Right. So it really depends on the employee's role
Okay.
and level of responsibility.
Okay.
So senior executives and key employees typically receive larger grants
Okay.
because their decisions have a greater impact on the company's overall
So
performance.
it's like the people steering the ship.
Exactly. The captain gets more stock
There's a
options.
bigger reward.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, I'm looking at the 2023 10K, and it says something about non-vested stock option-based awards. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah, that's an important detail. So basically, with non-vested stock options, it means that employees earn the right to exercise them
Okay.
over time.
So it's not like you get them all at once.
No, it's gradual. It's usually over a period of several years.
Oh, okay. So it's like planting a tree and waiting for it to bear fruit.
Exactly. You got it.
You have to nurture it
You have to be patient.
for a while. And the report says that they had $45 million in compensation expense
Wow.
related to these non-vested options.
That's a significant chunk of change.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
So that number basically reflects the future costs
Right.
that 3M anticipates incurring as those options vest
Okay.
and employees can exercise them.
Okay. So it's a significant commitment.
It is. But it also shows, how much they value their employees.
And their long-term contributions.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a gamble.
It is, yeah.
But it could pay off big time.
It could
Right.
for both the company and the employees.
If things go well.
Right.
But are there any risks?
Yeah, of course. I mean, one risk is dilution.
Dilution.
Yeah. So as more stock options are exercised, the total number of outstanding shares increases,
Okay.
which can dilute the ownership stake of existing shareholders.
Okay. So it's like cutting a pie into more slices.
Exactly. Each slice gets a little bit smaller.
Right. But what about the employees themselves?
Right.
Could those stock options influence their decision-making?
Yeah, that's another valid concern. If employees become too focused on boosting the stock price in the short term, they might make decisions that are not in the company's best interest in the long run.
It's like those get-rich-quick schemes you see advertised online.
Exactly. They might seem appealing at first,
Right.
but they rarely lead to sustainable success.
Yeah, okay, so it's a balancing act.
It is. And 3M needs to make sure that their stock option program aligns with their overall goals and values.
Which includes, sustainability,
Right.
ethical business practices.
Exactly. Remember those PFAS liabilities.
Yeah.
Making responsible decisions that address those concerns is crucial for the company's long-term reputation
Right.
and its financial health.
Yeah, it's like juggling multiple balls in the air,
It is.
trying to keep everything in balance.
You got it.
Okay, let's take a quick pause here
Okay.
and give our listener a moment to catch their breath.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have divestitures,
Supply chain complexity,
employee empowerment,
stock options.
the whole 9 yards.
When we come back, we'll delve into the final piece of this puzzle and see how 3M brings all of these elements together to navigate the future. Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into 3M. We've explored their diverse portfolio, global operations, employee empowerment, and stock options. Now let's see how it all fits together for their future.
It's like the final act of a play, right?
Exactly. All the plot lines converge. So how are they setting themselves up for success, considering all the challenges we talked about?
Well, the reports point to a few major themes: sustainability, e-commerce, emerging markets. Those seem to be their big focus areas.
Right, right. And they make sense. Those are huge trends.
Absolutely. 3M knows sustainability is crucial for the environment and for business. They're investing in renewable energy, cutting down waste, and creating eco-friendly products.
Yeah, they even set a target to slash greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2050. That's a big goal.
Ambitious, but it shows their commitment to climate action. Plus, they're looking into circular economy principles, so reducing, reusing, recycling, closing the loop.
Smart move. Got to minimize that footprint.
Totally. And then there's e-commerce. It's changing how business is done, so 3M's expanding their online presence, making it easy to buy directly.
Yeah, gotta love online shopping. It's so convenient.
Exactly, meeting those changing consumer habits. And of course, emerging markets. 3M sees huge potential in countries where economies are booming.
So they're looking beyond their traditional markets, finding new customers.
Exactly, expanding operations in places like Asia, Africa, Latin America, where demand is rising. It's like planting seeds for future harvests.
Sounds promising, but what about all those challenges, geopolitical risks, supply chains, regulations? How do they fit into these long-term plans?
It all comes down to risk management and being flexible. They're constantly watching global trends, spotting potential issues, and adjusting. Like when they had to sell off assets in Russia because of the conflict, a tough choice. But it shows they adapt to reality.
Playing chess, always thinking several moves ahead.
Yeah. Precisely. And it's not just reacting, it's shaping their own future, which is where R&D comes in. They're investing in cutting-edge tech, new materials, solutions for future needs, building a bridge to what's next.
Innovating their way forward. But with all this growth and expansion, can they keep that trust-based culture as they get bigger?
Good question. It gets harder to maintain any strong culture when things get complex. But 3M seems to get that, and they're taking steps.
So what are they doing to make sure their values don't get lost in all of this?
Focusing on leadership development, training leaders at all levels to really live those values and create a good environment, and investing in communication, making sure everyone feels connected and informed.
Weaving those values into the very fabric of the company.
Exactly. And their actions reinforce it too, not just words. Like choosing to phase out PFAS, even though it might cost them money, that shows commitment to doing right, even when it's tough.
Yeah, business success isn't just about the bottom line. It's about doing good too. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our 3M journey. We've really gotten into the nuts and bolts of their business model, what they're aiming for, and what's ahead of them.
It's been a real eye-opener. Their story's all about innovation, flexibility, and sticking to their values. They've made it through over a century of changes and seem ready for whatever's next.
I've learned a lot, got a whole new perspective on this company, and I bet our listeners have too.
Speaking of our listeners, one last thought for them to chew on. We discussed 3M's global reach going into new markets, but that means dealing with different cultures, different ethics. So how can companies like this make sure their actions in these diverse places still match their own values and principles? It's a tough question, no easy answers, but something to think about in our increasingly connected world.
Excellent food for thought as we wrap up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into 3M. We'll catch you next time for another exciting look into the business world.